And excuse me, I'm really not sleeping well at the moment. Guys, welcome to today's video. So, a bit of a different angle, but I think it's the best way I'm going to get light today, because it's like, again, another really dark grey UK January day. Try saying that fast 10 times. Yeah, we're here to talk about my lupus today, so if you're not into these videos, please feel free to skip this one. But I realised the other day that I did a video called Lupus 1 year from diagnosis, I think it was called, and I found that really interesting and important to watch back. And then I realised I hadn't done it for 2 years, and my 2-year date of being diagnosed has passed. So I really wanted to do that because so much happens and so much changes, and sometimes you can feel like you're going nowhere and not really growing or learning to do with your illness, and then you look back at those type of things and it's like, wow, I've really come so far and done so much, and so much has changed, and I just think it's important for me. So I got diagnosed with SLE, which is systemic lupus, something else on the end that I can't pronounce. I'll put the full word on the screen. But I got diagnosed with that in July of 2016. So this July in 2019 will actually be 3 years. So I'm only going to talk about what happened up until July of last year, and then in July I will do a 3-year one, because I just, yeah, I really think there's a lot to be gained for me and for others watching from these videos. So yeah, so 2 years on, so much has happened, so much changed, and so much continues to change, and it's really hard to even keep up, to be honest. So I have written some notes. Ironically, I was too unwell to film this in July of last year, so there you go. The first thing to note is that I've had noticeably less rashes than in my first year of since being diagnosed. In the second year I've had less rashes, and I have been on hydroxychloroquine for my lupus, and I think that is why, because it's got a lot of my symptoms under control. When I, like, in the build up to being diagnosed, and then the whole of 2016 and going into 2017, I was absolutely smothered in rashes. Like, it was horrendous. I'd wake up and it felt like my skin was on fire. It felt like really bad sunburn, which I've only ever had really bad sunburn maybe twice in my whole life, because I am super pale, so I deliberately have always avoided the sun, and I've also always felt really ill if I'm in the sun too long, which now I think is to do with my lupus. But yeah, that's what it felt like, real bad sunburn, like that stingy hot sensation. It was horrific and so itchy. My god, I could have ripped my skin off. If I was able to do that, I would have done that. I went to A&E loads about it, and I've just had less of that, which I think is down to with my medication. Finally, it actually took me a really long time to even get on medication for my lupus, so just because of the way I was failed at the time by doctors and hospitals. But yeah, so that's something to note, is that I've definitely had less rashes. Sorry, I know it's probably so annoying how much I'm fiddling with my hair, but it's really doing my nutting. I have had, though, longer flares. My flares seem to last for a lot longer, and sometimes I know that's down to me. I can feel myself flaring and I push through and I continue to do stuff, and then of course the flare just gets worse and worse and worse and lasts forever. But other times I feel like I have paid attention, I am resting, and it just doesn't seem to ever end. But I also only noticed recently, because this happened, but I haven't been asking for any extra help when I've been in flares, which is so stupid of me. And then I've had this flare that I'm in now still since just before Christmas, and when I last saw my GP, I was like, you have to give me steroids. I can't live like this. and they made me feel better. So and then when I did that and I came out, my boyfriend was like, oh yeah, because when you think about it, in the beginning, every single time you had a flare they gave you steroids. And I was like, yeah, now because they don't offer them to me or just straight away give them to me, I don't ask for them, which is stupid of me, and I'm going to now because it made me feel better and it works. And I don't know that there's much more. Obviously every person with lupus is different and all their symptoms are different and their flares will be different, but I think steroids is one of the main ways they treat flares of lupus, so it's stupid of me. I've had a lot of sleep problems. I actually went to a sleep hospital and stayed the night, and I had lots of tests done, and then I did sleep therapy because I have insomnia, parasomnia and restless leg syndrome, and I really think the restless leg syndrome is linked to my lupus and my fibro because I am in pain. I'm in too much pain and I can't get comfortable, I can't relax, my body is just never comfortable. So trying to rest your legs and go to sleep is like impossible. So I definitely think they're linked, which I obviously discussed with my doctors. But yeah, I've had a lot of sleep problems. Realising and then realising and then re-realising and then realising again that I still haven't fully come to terms with the illness. I still haven't fully accepted it or embraced it, and that I realise now that I was doing that because I thought, and because everyone says this to you as well when you're chronically ill, which if you're watching this and you're a spoonie you'll know, but everyone says to you like, why would you want to embrace it? No, fight against it, fight the illness, you'll be great. You can't. Like, you can't. So realising that and realising it again and again and again is has been a huge learning curve, because fighting against it has actually made me more ill. That's something that the physiotherapist and my sleep doctors, who are also psychiatrists, talked about it with me, like to do with your nerves and stuff. You're kind of giving, all the time that you're fighting against your illness, you're giving your nervous system like trauma and stress, and so then that adds to not being able to relax and not being able to calm your body, because you're just constantly in this, you're constantly fighting, and it's just not good for you. It actually makes you more ill. So learning that has been hard, and I'm still not all the way there, but I think it's a long-term thing. And but that's something. In 2016 I got diagnosed. I'd already been ill for so long, everyone kept telling me they didn't know what it was. So when I got diagnosed, I thought, well, I've come to terms with it already because I already knew this, and that's not the case. And your version of accepting it will change because the illness changes loads and life changes loads. So yeah, that's been a huge part of my second year of lupus. In that second year, I actually got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So yeah, that was difficult and changed things, because it all of a sudden meant I was in this place of, is this symptom lupus or fibro? Should I treat it like lupus or should I treat it like fibro? Because they are different. They have a lot of similarities, and a lot of people do have both, but they are very different. And lupus is life-threatening where fibro is not. So there's different ways to treat these things, and like being worried about that and like concerned about knowing which symptom was which, and when I'm having a flare, is it my lupus flaring or my fibro flaring? All that kind of stuff was hard. So yeah, and just getting diagnosed with it was like, wow, I really have two awful conditions. As like sad as that sounds, and as I guess as negative and as pessimistic as it sounds, that kind of was my mood for a long time. It's like, oh okay, so it wasn't enough that I have lupus, I have to have another awful condition to live with. But now I'm much more in a place of like, it's the card I've been dealt. But it definitely was hard, and I have been able to go to physio though because of fibro, and because I think that's one of the main ways they treat fibromyalgia is physiotherapy, and that has helped in many more ways than I can say. I'm still confused, and I am going to do a whole video about my physio journey, but I'm still confused about what the aim of the physio was. And every time I've asked the physio that, they're like, don't worry about aims, but to me, I want to know, like, okay, so if I'm going to you to lower my pain levels, if it's been a year and my pain levels are the same, is this working? Should we change it up? Should we just stop? You know, that's the kind of thing I need to know, because I need to be knowing whether it's working or not. But I just don't ever get an answer about it. It's really been quite frustrating. And also that I haven't found that physio has changed my day-to-day life in terms of how much I can move, how much I can do, and how much pain I'm in, which I thought it would. Initially, that's what I thought it would do, and it hasn't. But it's given me a totally fresh mindset with movement and my body, and it's made me realise how much I can do without causing a flare, which has been huge, monumental. So lots of positives, but still confused about it and whether it's working, because I don't really know what I'm meant to be looking for it for whether it's working or not. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. But yeah, that was a huge part of the second year. Pain and fatigue are the two symptoms that I find it hardest to live with, which may seem obvious, but there are many symptoms. Pain is just constant. I am constantly in pain. It's a weird way to live, and just learning to live in constant pain is hard and exhausting. And the fatigue, people don't understand that don't suffer with it. They really don't, and they think they do, and people make jokes about stuff like, oh yeah, well, I had a really long day at work and I'm tired too. It's not the same. Like, I have experienced both. You know, I've lived with lupus and the fatigue, and I've also experienced tiredness after a really long day and been exhausted after a really long day. I get it, but they're just not the same. Fatigue is a whole different monster. It's from the second you wake up, you don't ever feel rested. You don't ever feel like you've even slept a wink. And it's not just that you feel tired. When you're tired, you're just tired. When you're fatigued, your entire body feels too exhausted to even lift itself or move itself or hold a drink or anything like that. Like, that's, I don't know, it is really hard to explain, but those are definitely the two things I continue to struggle with most. And I don't really like being on the really strong painkillers that I have, just because they make me feel really high, and a lot of people would be like, well, yay, but it's just not for me. I like being like in my right mind, and they just make me feel off my tits. And I only use them when I'm like extremely desperate. But yeah, so those are the two main symptoms I struggle with. I've started to accept though that I need more help, and that has been a huge change, a huge game changer, because I've started to accept more help from people around me. I've started to accept more help from healthcare providers. I've started to actually use wheelchairs and mobility aids more, especially like in this recent flare. I realised that a big part of why my mental health suffered so badly in my flare that was all of last summer was because I couldn't leave the house, I couldn't go outside, I couldn't do anything, and it was just miserable, and I hated it. It just was really hard for me. And so in this flare, if ever I've been like, no, I'm literally too exhausted to even go like do the food shop with my boyfriend, I'm like, no, I will go, but I'll go in a mobility scooter or I go in a wheelchair. And just being able to still get out and about has been so freeing. And people always say this, like, people that use mobility aids always say it's weird that people will refer to it as like being confined to a wheelchair or being forced into a wheelchair, but actually it's like incredibly freeing for people that need them. They are your way of getting around, they are your way of socializing, they are your way of living life. And I really want my own wheelchair, because I did have one, but long story short, I don't anymore. And I really want one, because if summer comes around again and that happens again, I want to be prepared that I can still at least leave the house. So yeah, it was a hard one. The first few times I got in a mobility scooter in a supermarket, I was incredibly self-conscious. It's just very, very strange the way people treat you. And I'd used one before when I broke my leg, and instead of going round on crutches the whole time, whoever I was with was like, just get in the mobility scooter, like that's what they're there for. So I did, but using it then was like fun and a bit of a novelty, like yay, I'm off my broken leg and this is great. But knowing that that's not like, you're not in it and unable to move, if that makes sense. And now when I get in them, it's a vulnerable place to be, and people just treat you so strange. Like, some people will just act like you don't exist. They'll just like walk into you and walk off without even like saying anything. Other people stare, like they stare so hard. People are either trying to figure out why you're in it, or it's just like, I don't know, you just feel like you're a circus freak. I can't explain it. Like, it's just the weirdest thing. That it's still so weird to me that in 2019 people still will stare at people in wheelchairs and mobility aids, but they do. So yeah, it's been a big year. A lot has been learned the hard way. Actually, at the time in July of 2018, when it would have been exactly 2 years, I was incredibly depressed and in a really dark place of like just feeling like I couldn't do this forever. Like I couldn't go through life having a flare like that every summer and living the way I was. But I've made a lot of adjustments and changes, and I've learnt a lot from that. And yeah, so I'm hoping this like third year will be better than the second year was, which I already think it is. But yeah, so that's where I am 2 years after diagnosis of SLE, and now I have a fibro diagnosis too. And all of my sleep diagnoses as well, like all of the ones I listed, yeah, they're all new, so crazy. I hope you enjoyed this video. Is that a weird thing to say? I hope you learned something from it, or if you were coming here looking for information about lupus because you have it, and or you've just been diagnosed or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. I found that one of the biggest things that got me through was like reaching out to people that have the same things and watching lots of videos about life with lupus, and because I like to know the facts. I don't want anything sugar-coated, but also a lot of it is really hopeful and does give you hope. So yeah, just if you've just been diagnosed with it, or even if you just have lupus, please be easy on yourself, be kind to yourself, listen to your body, know that you know your body better than anyone. And yeah, I hope you're having a beautiful day. Subscribe if you aren't already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.